television annually. 6 million videos are rented every day. And in today's society, the average amount of conversation time spent with parents and their teenagers is 3.5 hours. That's in a 7-day period. Back in 1968, they interviewed a gentleman by the name of Marty Cruz. Marty Cruz makes CDs, tapes and that, of nature sounds. Back in the late 60s, it took him 15 hours to get 1 hour of undisturbed nature. That's no automobiles, no planes, no nothing, no sirens, nothing. In the late 90s, when they asked him again, at that time it took him over 2,000 hours just to get 1 hour. At the beginning, I mentioned how we pray, how we spend time with God. How do we speak to him? Do we speak to him in silence? In 1 Kings 19:11 through 13, Elijah has just fled for his life. He killed people, so now someone wants his head on a platter. At this point, he is hiding up on top of a mountain in a cave. And the whole time he's in there, he hears this little voice asking, "What are you doing here? What are you doing here?" So finally, after so long, Elijah runs out of the cave, and the entire mountain starts shaking with wind. Rocks are falling, trees are being blown down. And it stops. But God's not in the wind. And then there's an earthquake, and the whole mountain shakes, and Elijah shakes where he's at, and it stops. But God's not in the earthquake either. And then there's a fire. And the entire top of the mountain is just engulfed in fire around Elijah and everything, and it stops. But God's not in the fire. For that split second after all this had happened, it is dead silent. And he hears a tiny little voice, and it's God. So what is silence? The dictionary will tell you that it's an absence of sound or noise, stillness, muteness, nothing. Why is it so difficult to handle silence? What does God have to do to get our attention? I've never told anyone the story but my wife. Last year, on the way down to family camp, I came back on Sunday. And on the way back, I left right after 5 or so, so by the time I got to Roswell, it was pretty much dark. And I'm going down the road, and I got the stereo going. I'm completely awake. I am not tired, no nothing. I'm aware of what is going on. And about 20 minutes out of Roswell, out of nowhere, you know how you're sitting at the stoplight and you see that person coming up behind you, they're about to slam in the back of you? What happens? Everything goes slow motion. I'm driving down the highway in my car, it was about 65, and that's what happens. Everything goes slow motion. And as I'm driving, I've got my hand on the wheel, and I just feel the nose of the Jeep going into the ground. And I feel it, I know what's going on, and there's no one else around on the road. I am the only one out there at this time. Now, I've been into a few situations in a vehicle that would probably scare a lot of people or whatnot. This is the only thing that has ever brought me to stop, get out of the car, and pace, trying to figure out what in the heck just happened. After about 5 minutes or so, pacing back and forth along the road, I got back in, started it up, turned off the radio, and for the rest of the way home, it was complete silence in the car. And during that time, God and I had a very long